My dear, in the sacred space where body and soul unite, the words we speak become alchemical. There are 3 sentences a woman may whisper, not merely to arouse his body, but to awaken his archetypal masculine essence. These are not lines of seduction, they are invocations of the anima and the shadow, merging desire with the soul's yearning. I trust you completely, take me where you want. This is not submission. It is the feminine yielding to the masculine principle, calling him into his fullest presence. It speaks to the deep unconscious need of man to be trusted in his power. Right now I want to feel all of you. No masks, no roles. This is a call to authenticity, piercing the persona. In the bedchamber, as in the psyche, nothing is more erotic than unveiling the self. You make me feel like the only woman who's ever existed. This sentence ignites the hero within. It mirrors the anima projection. Every man unconsciously longs to feel he is the one who can awaken the eternal feminine in his beloved. The erotic, in its truest essence, is not confined to the body. It is a psychic phenomenon, a mysterious bridge between the conscious mind and the vast sea of the unconscious. When 2 individuals come together in physical union, it is not merely an act of pleasure or instinctual release. Beneath the surface of touch and breath, something far older and more sacred unfolds. The meeting of archetypes, the merging of energies that have lived within the collective psyche for millennia. The erotic moment holds within it the potential to dissolve the boundaries of the ego and open a portal into the depths of the soul. For in those heightened states of arousal and vulnerability, the conscious mind surrenders its rigid control and the unconscious begins to speak in symbols, through desire, through sensation, through unspoken longing. When a woman speaks to a man in the midst of intimacy, not merely words of seduction but words of deep invitation, she activates something ancient within him. He does not hear her voice alone. He hears the voice of the archetypal feminine, the anima, calling him back to the lost parts of himself. And she too becomes more than herself in that moment. She becomes a vessel through which the energies of eros, of transformation, of psychic integration flow. The erotic is not just an expression of libido, it is the soul's language, reaching beyond the veil of conscious understanding and inviting both partners into a state of symbolic union. To speak erotically is to speak in the language of the unconscious. It bypasses logic, analysis, and defense. A phrase whispered in the dark, a look exchanged in silence, a request made with open vulnerability. These become rites of passage into deeper knowing. Jung taught that the unconscious does not speak in rational sentences, but in images, myths, and dreams. And so too does the erotic act. In those moments, one might find themselves embodying roles they never consciously chose: the protector, the seducer, the priestess, the wild woman. These are not fantasies, they are the mythic figures buried within the collective unconscious, rising to the surface under the heat of passion. When we treat sex as a spiritual or symbolic act, we begin to see how the erotic can lead to transformation. A man who hears, in bed, the words, "I trust you completely," is not only aroused, he is entrusted with something sacred. His conscious mind hears affirmation, but his unconscious feels responsibility, reverence, and awakening. He is no longer performing, he is becoming. The erotic gives shape to the formless desires buried within both the individual and the collective psyche. It creates a space where we are no longer bound by the constraints of our identities, but freed into a realm where opposites can unite and where pleasure becomes a path to inner revelation. This is not indulgence, it is initiation. To trust a man fully is not a gesture of naivety, it is a summoning. When a woman surrenders control in the presence of a man she loves, when she says, "I trust you completely, take me where you want," she is not simply offering him her body. She is invoking something much deeper, more primal, more sacred. She is calling forth the archetypal masculine within him, the eternal image of the protector, the leader, the bearer of purpose and direction. In Jungian thought, this moment is not casual or erotic alone. It is mythic. It is the soul recognizing its counterpart in form. The feminine, by her nature, is receptive, intuitive, fluid, but when she opens herself and offers her trust to a man, she creates a container in which the masculine can fully emerge, rooted in presence and responsibility, not domination. Every man carries within him the imprint of the archetype of the king, the warrior, the lover, and the magician. These are not personas he adopts consciously, they are deeper psychic structures formed through the collective unconscious. But these archetypes lie dormant when a man is unsure, distrusted, or constantly tested. The feminine voice that says, "I trust you," is a psychic ignition. It speaks not just to the man she sees, but to the archetype behind him. It tells the unconscious, "You are worthy of holding space, you are capable of leading, you are safe to be strong." And in response, the man does not simply become aroused, he becomes awake. He straightens his posture, he deepens his breath, he listens more closely because he is no longer acting for approval. He is rising into who he was always meant to be. In this dynamic, we see the ancient dance of polarity, the sacred interplay between yin and yang, animus and anima. The woman who gives her trust is not relinquishing power. She is exercising the deepest form of influence. She becomes the mirror through which he sees his strength, not in opposition to her but in service of her. This is not subjugation, nor is it manipulation. It is the symbolic rebalancing of psychic energies. When the feminine trusts, the masculine is moved not to conquer but to protect. He becomes the guardian of her vulnerability, the keeper of her mystery, the steward of her surrender. Jung reminds us that the unconscious is structured in opposites, and wholeness comes only when those opposites are reconciled. The trust a woman offers a man in the intimate moment is a ritual of that reconciliation. It invites the man to step beyond the ego, beyond the societal role-playing of masculinity, and into a deeper form, an archetypal masculinity that does not seek to dominate, but to hold, to guide, to serve with conscious power. When a man is trusted in this way, not only does he feel desired, he feels chosen, remembered, called back to the original fire of his own being. When a woman looks into a man's eyes in the most vulnerable moment of intimacy and says, "I want to feel all of you, no masks, no roles," she does not merely request his attention or desire, she is initiating a confrontation with his persona. The persona, as Jung described it, is the social mask we wear, the polished, acceptable version of ourselves shaped by expectation, duty, and adaptation. It is necessary for survival in the outer world, but it is not the self. And in the sacred space of erotic connection, the persona becomes a barrier. It keeps the soul at bay. It performs, it hides, it fears exposure. But when one partner dares to demand authenticity, the illusion begins to crack. What follows is not performance but presence, not image but essence. This call for authenticity is not a demand for confession, nor is it a psychological analysis. It is a psychic invitation. It says, "Come as you are. Let me see what even you cannot see fully in yourself. Let the performance drop." The woman who speaks these words is not merely arousing a man, she is awakening him. She is drawing him into the arena of the inner world where the real work begins. In this moment, the bedroom becomes the temple, and sex becomes not entertainment, but initiation. To ask for authenticity is to ask for the truth behind the structure. It is a direct challenge to the ego, which has spent a lifetime learning how to be liked, how to be successful, how to be masculine in a world that often confuses power with pretense. But the soul does not respond to role play. The soul yearns for union, and union can only happen when the masks fall away. The woman, in this role, becomes the priestess, guiding him through the dissolving of his false identity and into the full presence of his being. In her presence, he is no longer the man he thought he had to be. He is simply what he is, wounded and whole, powerful and tender, shadow and light. In the Jungian sense, this moment of intimacy becomes a confrontation with the shadow. For the persona and the shadow are twin creations, one formed by what we show, the other by what we hide. And when a man is asked to be fully present, he must reckon with both. It is not easy. The fear of exposure runs deep. But when he accepts the invitation, when he brings not just his desire but his shame, his longing, his doubt, and his truth into the space, then the erotic becomes transformative. It ceases to be merely pleasurable and becomes alchemical. Authenticity is eros for the soul. It is the force that melts through the constructs of who we think we should be and reveals the sacredness of who we are. It is in this moment, when masks fall and roles dissolve, that two people stop performing love and begin to embody it. When a woman speaks the words, "You make me feel like the only woman who's ever existed," she is not merely flattering a man, she is engaging in an archetypal ritual. In that single sentence, she is offering him a mirror in which he sees not only her but himself reflected as the one capable of awakening the eternal feminine. And in that reflection, something ancient stirs. The feminine, in Jungian psychology, is not merely a gendered identity, it is a principle of life, of soul, of mystery. When a man perceives that he has touched this dimension in a woman, that he has stirred her essence, he is brought face to face with his deepest unconscious longing, to be in communion with the archetypal feminine, with the anima that lives at the core of his psyche. The anima is not just a fantasy woman or idealized lover, it is the inner feminine image that shapes his creativity, his longing, his capacity for emotional connection. Most men, unaware of this inner reality, project it outward onto women. But when a woman recognizes him deeply and allows herself to be fully seen and affected by him, the man does not simply feel appreciated, he feels initiated, he feels chosen by something greater than personality. He becomes more than just a man in that moment. He becomes a vessel of the masculine principle called forth by love, by beauty, by the divine force of receptivity that the feminine holds. To worship the feminine is not to place her above the masculine, but to acknowledge her as sacred. It is to see her not through the eyes of lust or possession, but through reverence, the recognition that within her lies mystery, chaos, intuition, and the power of life itself. When a man touches this energy, when he witnesses a woman open in love, in surrender, in radiance, something holy awakens within him. He becomes humbled, he becomes present, he becomes aware of the forces moving through them both, forces that are not personal but archetypal. This is the great secret of Eros. It is not a transaction of desire, but a ceremony of recognition. And in this ceremony, man is invited to reclaim the parts of himself that have been forgotten in the pursuit of status, strength, and societal approval. He is reminded that he is not just a doer, a protector, or a provider, but a witness to mystery. In the presence of the feminine, when he is truly seen and is able to make her feel singular, irreplaceable, he reconnects to the source within himself. The eternal feminine draws him beyond his surface identity into depth, into soul. In myth, in dreams, and in the symbolic life, the feminine often appears as the muse, the queen, the goddess. She is not asking to be conquered, she is inviting transformation. And when a man can make a woman feel like the only woman in existence, he participates in that myth. He steps into that sacred story. The masculine is never more alive, more purposeful, more awake than when it honors the feminine not as object, but as the vessel of the numinous. This act of worship is not weakness. It is awakening. It calls him back to what is eternal within himself. Words, in their deepest form, are not mere tools for communication. They are vessels of energy, carriers of symbol, and agents of transformation. In the realm of intimacy, when consciousness is heightened and the veil between ego and soul begins to thin, a single word can act as an alchemical key. Spoken in presence and vulnerability, words such as "I trust you," "I need you," "take me," are not simply invitations to pleasure. They are psychic sigils, unlocking forces buried deep within the unconscious. The erotic moment is not just physical, it is a ritual space, and within that space, words become incantations that can summon archetypes, dissolve defenses, and awaken dormant energies in the psyche. Jung understood that symbols are the language of the unconscious, and words, when imbued with emotion, desire, and intention, become symbolic. In the ordinary world, a sentence may pass unnoticed, trivial, but in the intimate encounter, where masks are removed and the soul speaks in silence and sensation, language takes on a mythic dimension. The sentence becomes a spell, the breath becomes a bridge, the tone becomes an echo from the collective memory of the soul. These are not just personal expressions, they tap into what Jung called the archetypal layer of the psyche, the shared human reservoir of image, instinct, and transformation. To say to a man, "You make me feel like the only woman who's ever existed," is not merely to stroke his ego, it is to awaken the king, the lover, the hero within him. These words operate like alchemical fire. They ignite the masculine principle and transmute it from a social mask into a living force. In this sense, erotic words are not ornamental, they are essential. They move the relationship from biology into mythology. They initiate a process of psychic fusion that goes beyond pleasure and into individuation, the sacred journey of becoming whole. When two people speak to each other in the throes of love, the unconscious listens more attentively than the ears. Every word bypasses rational scrutiny and sinks into the soul. And depending on the purity of intention behind the word, it either builds a bridge between their inner worlds or reawakens old wounds. This is the risk and the power. For the alchemist, every substance has the potential to become gold if transmuted through fire, patience, and reverence. So too does every word carry the potential to become transformative if spoken with truth, presence, and love. In intimate speech, we are not just speaking to the other person, we are speaking to their unconscious, to their inner child, their shadow, their wounds, and their buried gold. The words we choose carry emotional charge, psychic weight, and symbolic meaning. In this way, love becomes a form of psychic alchemy, and language becomes its sacred instrument. When we speak from the soul in the midst of erotic connection, we do not merely seduce, we initiate transformation. We awaken memory in the other's body, stir archetypes in their psyche, and invite both partners into the deeper mystery of union. In the deepest layers of the psyche, the erotic is not a fleeting indulgence, but a symbolic ritual, an arena where the self seeks wholeness through the merging of opposites. These intimate exchanges, charged with vulnerability and spoken in the language of soul, serve as initiations into deeper consciousness. Through trust, authenticity, and symbolic language, man and woman do not merely engage in desire, they encounter the hidden forces of the archetypal realm. The persona dissolves, the anima and animus awaken, and the sacred dance of polarity becomes a mirror for inner transformation. It is here, in this sacred space between two souls, that the alchemy of love reveals its truest purpose. Not simply to connect bodies, but to unite the fragmented self with the eternal, and in doing so, lead both lovers closer to the mystery of individuation.